Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for attending our community conversation, our social justice, which deals specifically tonight with understanding homosexuality. So what we're going to do initially is we're just going to have our panelists introduce themselves. We're going to start on the other end and come back this way.
Hello, my name is Clifton Fair.
Hello, how y'all doing? Hey, I'm Ed. Can you hear me?
I'm Ederic. We all have microphones. Hello, I'm Terry Dyer. I'm Anthony Sapp.
And I am Lorenzo Robertson, the Executive Director with the Ujima Men's Collective. One of the things we're doing this evening as we're doing a series of community conversations that really focus on social justice. When we were initially writing our proposal for this, we applied for funding from the Our Fund Foundation as well as the Community Foundation of Broward. And we were awarded funding to actually do a series of conversations that really dwell with on social justice and how it affects Black same-gender loving men. So that's why you see the panel looks as it does today, because we want to have those conversations around that are specific to that particular population. One of the things we want to start with is, first and foremost, again, we want to, again, thank our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't be here, because I wouldn't pay y'all.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord. But one of the things we do, we want to make sure that we do thank our sponsors, which is the Our Fund Foundation and the Community Foundation of Broward. Yes, give it up for them because they sponsored our program tonight. And they sponsored our Brothers Project, and Brothers is really an acronym for Brothers Reaching Out to Help Another Son. So that's our program that we're dealing with this tonight. Is really deals again with Black same-gender loving men. First, I want to deal with homosexuality. When we talk about that, first I want to give a definition. I Googled it today. It says homosexuality refers to attraction between people who are the same sex. It comes from the Greek word homos, meaning the same. It is sexual orientation as opposed to gender identity. So such as male, female, non-binary, and gender non-conforming. So tonight we're specifically talking about the homosexual community. So we have to make sure that that's the population that we're talking about. So I gave you guys a series of questions, but before that, when I think I initially asked each of you to be a part of the panel, one of the things I wanted to have each of you talk about was how you actually had that process of coming out to share with your friends, family, or other people that you were a person who was a part of the LGBTQ community, that you were a same-gender loving man, and what that process was. I mean, I could share my story. It's very mundane. It's like, I told them, they were like, okay, it was not a big deal. So it was never a traumatic experience. It was not anything that was dramatic. It was just kind of, when I told them, there was no problem. It was like, you're still our son, we still love you, you're still a part of the family. It was not a big deal. But I know that that is not necessarily the same experience that a lot of people in our community have experienced when they shared that they were a part of the LGBTQ community or they were outed by other people. So therefore, it's like I wanted some people to share their stories in terms of their process of coming out and how that impacted them, and actually what happened when they shared with their family members that they were a part of the LGBTQ community. So we'll start with Clifton, and then we'll move our way down the panel.
Thank you very much, first and foremost, Lorenzo and Ujima, for allowing me to sit on this panel. To answer the question, I really am brought back to April of 2001. I was in school as a college freshman. I was playing football for a major university in Louisiana, and it was finals week that April, and my mother and father drove from their small town about 2 hours away in order to confront me, because one of my siblings who I had confided in had disclosed to them that I was gay. And everybody pretty much knows what it feels like to be under stress during a time of major exams, whether it's high school or college. And I was a freshman, so I really needed to make sure I got my correct grades for my scholarship. I was an academic scholar. And I just remember my mother and father just ridiculing me and really challenging me on who I was as a person, who I was as their son, as a part of the family, and also who I was as a Christian man at that time. So needless to say, it was super traumatic because I really didn't feel like I had the support of my parents at a time that was very hectic and stressful. Not just with my finals, but also being a collegiate student athlete and trying to navigate that space as well as understanding who I was. So that pretty much set me on a bit of a tailspin as far as it relates to coming out. Now, there were many other people that I ran into over the years that helped me kind of reel that back in, because as a result of that experience with my parents, I did walk through many dark days alone, and sometimes it was best that I did, walk through those alone, just because of some of the, dare I say, self-shame or embarrassment that I accumulated over the years because of the maladaptive behavior I got involved in due to that rejection or that abandonment. But I would say that was probably the beginning of my my experience in coming out. That was the first one. Yeah, that's the one.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable, because a lot of times when those questions are asked, people kind of glaze over. They give you this, sugarcoat, this cookie cutter answer. But thank you for going a little deeper into it. Edward?
Mine was similar to yours. My sister outed me, but it was no secret. So I don't want to spend time on that. What I want to spend time on, in the nutshell, of how it affected my work. So when I moved to South Florida, I moved here 13 years ago to attend Florida Memorial University, and I was called to serve as minister of music of one of the oldest and historic Black Bahamian Baptist churches in Overtown. And I'll never forget, I went through the whole process, and not only did they call me to be their minister of music, but the pastor saw the calling on my life, and I never forget that following Sunday, I delivered my initial sermon. For those who want to know what initial sermon is, trial sermon, your first sermon, and then the church will, come and vote you, should we give you your license to minister. And so everything was going well, and I never forget, a couple of weeks later after that, he called me in the office and asked me, are you gay? And I said, I puzzled. I was like, what should I say? And but I told the truth. I said yes. So I stayed there for a year, but it was horrible. The treatment was horrible. To finally one Sunday before church, called me in the office and said, we have to part ties. We cannot have someone who is a practicing homosexual. And I said, I'm not a practicing homosexual. I mastered this years ago. Practicing, baby. I teach you a thing or two. So that was my dealing with that. And ever since then, when I said yes, and I look at the circle, there was a circle of friends that we both, it was a group of us about the same age, and we were the same age, and we confessed our calling at the same time. I look at them now. Some of them, they went on to Morehouse, Clark, and now they're pastoring major churches. And we're all a part of the same thing. But I decided to say yes, and they decided to say no. And I had to deal with that because the Bible says, worship me in spirit and in truth. And I had to realize that I was only one part. I was worshiping him in spirit, but not in truth. And I had to look at my other counterparts, and I had to understand there was a sacrifice in saying yes. Must Jesus bear the cross alone and all the world go free? Yes, there's a cross for everyone, and there was a cross for me, and that was my cross I had to bear. And knowing what true ministry really is. And that was it.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that, because a lot of times we talk about spirituality and sexuality. A lot of people try to divorce those two, but they're connected. They're interconnected, and we have to stop disconnecting the two and putting them together, because that's a part of who we are as people. Be it heterosexual, homosexual, it doesn't matter. We all have a sexuality. Terry.
Good evening. Good evening.
Fairly well.
There we go. There we go. That's better. Thank you again, as our brother Clifton said. Thank you so much for having us here and giving space to conversation that is continuously important to our community. Right. What I love, and I said to someone earlier, sometimes coming into these spaces, it breaks my heart when there are so few of us that are in this space, and we typically have the same people coming to the events, which means we're not necessarily the folks that need to hear the message, but I'm a firm believer in it doesn't matter who's in the room, right? Because what you learn in that room, you'll take to somebody else, right? And that's how we move things forward. So again, thank you so much, Lorenzo, for having this. So my coming out story was very similar to Clifton's in a way. Student athlete in college, grew up playing sports, etc. So one of the things that I want to say first and foremost is we're constantly having to come out over and over and over. It doesn't matter if we are in corporate America, it doesn't matter if we're in nonprofit work, healthcare, etc. We constantly have to wear that badge of being Black. We have to wear the badge of being LGBTQ, etc. Which means we're constantly having to prove ourselves, etc., etc. At 15 years old, I held my first real job at Taco Bell. Yes, ma'am. And so my mother picked me up from work, and she was crying, and I mean sobbing, right? And for anybody who knows a little bit about the relationship between my mother and I, it was very tumultuous from that day forward. And she unfortunately passed away a few months ago, so sometimes talking about this now has a completely different meaning than it did before she passed away. So what I will say is, in that story, she looked at me when she picked me up and she was crying, and she said to me, "I need you to tell me the truth." And for 2 years, I was molested by a church family friend, and so she had just found out. She received a phone call from someone who told her what was going on, and that started my coming out process to her. In talking to family over years, they all knew that I was a big homo, right? Like very, artistic, and had the flair and the flash, and loved to dress at 5 and 6 years old, right? So they all knew, but no one ever talked about it. No one ever acknowledged it. There were behaviors that my family pushed me in, right? Track and field, Air Force Junior ROTC. They wanted me to go into the service, right? That was how they were going to toughen me up, because they knew, they just didn't want to say the words or acknowledge the fact that I was questioning my sexuality from early childhood, right? So authorities, had to go to court, testify, all that stuff. But one of the things that has sat with me is the authorities came to me. They put us in separate rooms, and the authority said to me, "Your mother just told us that she already knew that you were questioning your sexuality, so she's confused as to why you wouldn't tell her that this was going on." Now, as a 15-year-old, I don't know how to respond to that, right? What does that mean? But as an adult, and going back and doing the work around all of those trials and tribulations, I realized that that was her MO, right? We know that sometimes parents will try to keep up with the Joneses, right? So this was her way of saying, "Oh, no, we're good. We don't have to address that. Let's address the issue of the crime that has happened, and while we're sitting in this police station, we're not going to talk about his sexuality, though." And that basically set the tone for our relationship for the next 30 some odd years, until, again, may she rest in peace, till she passed away. So my coming out at 15, 16 years old was very traumatic, unfortunately, right? And we have had because of that sexuality, and because of finally saying the words at that time, "Mom, I'm bisexual," and then a few years later, "No, I'm gay," those words will always be something that has drawn a wedge between myself and the rest of my family.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, because I have a wonderful relationship with my mother. If people know her, that she's always very supportive of everything I do. She's always around, and I've always had that type of support. And it's just heartbreaking to hear that a mom does not want to recognize who her child is, regardless of what their choices have been or their sexual orientation, which is not, you didn't decide to do that one day. It was it was innately who you are. But I'm sorry to hear that. Anthony, we'll have you share your story now.
For me, my story, my coming out story with my mom is not traumatic. I got caught. I got caught. Yeah. I didn't get caught. I didn't get caught doing anything. I got caught from a friend who's my best friend now, a text message. So my brothers and sisters knew. Let's see. This was my last year at high school. It was spring break. My grandma asked me, "Hey, can you come help me clean my house right up the street?" I said, "Yeah." My mom took me. I was like, "Can you come get me so I can come get clothes?" She was like, "Yeah, I gotta go to work. I'll drop you off back off to the bus stop so you can get back." I left my phone in the car. I get to my grandma's house. I'm like, "Where's my phone?" I'm panicking now. So she's like, I'm blowing my mom up. I'm like, "Can you bring me my phone?" She's like, "You'll get it when you come back home." I'm like, okay, that's weird. So around this time, my brothers and sisters knew. They tried to out me to friends, but I'm like, I didn't care. I did, but I didn't at the same time. So back to my mom's. So I come home a week later. She gave me back my phone. And she was like, "Oh, we gonna run errands tomorrow. Me and you, we gotta talk." I'm like, okay. Next morning we get up. She wake me up at like 8. We're driving down Sawgrass Expressway because we stayed out of Coral Springs. She asked me who is there. I'm like, who? Now the text message she seen from my best friend, it was a picture of me with a ball under my shirt, and my best friend sent back Darren's big mama. So next question was, "Are you gay?" I said yes, and she asked me, "Well, how long you knew? Why didn't you tell me?" And she started to cry. And my mom said, "I failed you," and I'm like, "But you did not." She said, "I failed as a mother." I'm like, "But you did not. I'm in my last year of high school. I beat the other two. You didn't fail." I was the first graduate to walk across the stage. Behind the year after me was my sister. After that, me and my mom relationship got very awkward. She didn't know how to raise a gay child. So those years I was very depressed. I didn't have a safe space to go to, so I was still trying to figure things out on my own. Following year, I didn't graduate when I was supposed to. I graduated the following year. I met my best friends. I found the people who I love to this day. They helped me become more comfortable with being gay. So now me and my mom have a great relationship now. Back then we didn't. She didn't know how to raise me. She didn't know what. My mom was still a child raising 4 kids, so, and she was single parent, so she forced herself. She had to provide for us and still trying to raise us. That's my story.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow, I mean, thank you for sharing, because it's like, so many people have so many different stories. There are, some people have the horrible initial time when you tell your parents, and then you eventually get to a point where now we're good friends or we're best friends. Then some people, they get to the point they have that horrible opening or that horrible outing, and then they never actually come back together. And so they never have an opportunity to have the relationship with their mother that they want, and the mother doesn't have the relationship that she wants with their child either. It's really that kind of gap that happens sometimes in some families, and it's really sad that does happen. Unfortunately, we all have our own, bridges to bear and our crosses to bear and everything, but it's really about how we go through those things and really try to go to the next level. And I'm so happy that you found your tribe. You found your tribe of people who are going to love you regardless of anything else. They know that you are part of the tribe, and that's the best thing we all can do, is find our tribe of people that are going to support us. They're going to love us unconditionally, regardless of anything. They're always going to be there. They're going to help you bury their bodies. But anyway, but you always have those friends who are always going to be a part of your life. I did send you guys a series of questions, so I'm going to ask some of the questions now. Just, we can popcorn it back and forth. I'll ask you, and then you can refer it over to the next person. One of the first questions I really want to ask is, do you feel that you were born gay? Is that something that did you always know that you were gay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Anthony.
Listen, from young age, I know I liked the boys. I flirt with girls, but I know I like the boys.
Okay. Who do you want to pass it to?
I'm passing to you, Edwin.
Edward.
From the womb to the tomb. Eddie, how did you know you was gay when I came out of my mama and the doctor slapped me on my behind and I said, harder, Daddy? I think it was a given. It was a given. I mean, have y'all seen my baby pictures? Legs crossed.
You were gay.
Hands on my hip. I was born a lady. I don't know what y'all talking about. I was born a lady. But like Anthony, I always knew. So I was born in Bradenton, but I grew up in Revere Beach, and I went to this Revere Beach. I grew up in Stony Brook, went to Lincoln Elementary, but I went to this Christian school, pre-K, Pride and Joy, and I used to have y'all remember when Disney had the covers, the cartoon covers? So I had Barney and I had Simba, and I used to always want Travis, and y'all come at that time, come and live with me. And then when we used to play house, y'all remember when we used to play house, y'all? I think that's when we were figuring out sexuality. Because when I play house, I wanted to be the mama. Yes. I always wanted to be the mama, but I wanted to do the humping. You couldn't. I'm just saying.
So who you want to pass it on to?
Clifton, you want it?
No, I do not. I don't want it. Oh my God. Wow. I feel like such a bore right now. I feel like, oh, it's a lot. I mean, for maybe a regular person.
You didn't
No,
do that. In that time, you didn't have the little boys come and.
Okay, there was a discovery process to this, right? Okay, so and realistically, even so, as a child, I don't know where that's coming from, but as a child, I really didn't know. I wasn't clear on what I liked or didn't like or anything like that. It was like, oh, you got one too, or you just kind of figuring things out. There was a traumatic experience that took place at the age of 11, but I really didn't connect with my sexuality, not somebody else's, right? As it relates to the trauma, but I didn't connect with my sexuality until 16, 17, where I really started desiring someone else, and that came on both fronts, with girls and boys, and then I made a very clear decision and understanding of who I actually was easy. Who I actually was attracted to as a gay man. I hope that answers the question. I just made it real murky.
It does. Thank you.
Right. Terry, would you like to?
Yeah, it's hard to follow Edward.
Right. You don't know what to say when he speaks. Like, okay, girl. Okay. All right. To answer the question in simple, plain terms, absolutely from birth. I don't think, and I used to say this to my family all the time, right? Why in the world would someone wake up every single day saying, I want to go get ridiculed by society, I want to get up and get treated like a second-class citizen, I want my job, my rights, all these things to be challenged. Who in their right mind would wake up every day and say, I'm going to be gay and go deal with all of that, right? So from my perspective, there's no way in the world that anybody would choose to be gay, to choose to be ridiculed and potentially, beaten up and the Matthew Shepherds of the world. Nobody chooses that.
But there's a degree of naivete as you're working in that bubble of just trying to understand who you are. Like the rest of the world, to one degree or another, it almost kind of like goes away and you're just like trying to understand this part of you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for me in my household, we were latchkey kids, from a broken home, divorce, all that stuff, right? Moved from the Midwest to California at 7 years old, where I knew at 3 and 4 years old, there was a situation in my aunt's house. My mother was a twin. In my aunt's house where I was drawing in a book, and there were like 5,000 things I wanted to be when I grew up, right? An attorney, a singer, a track star, and a fashion designer was one. She loves to dress, child. She loves to dress. So, yes. So I was drawing women's clothes, and I showed my aunt, and I think I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I showed my aunt the book, and I said, "Oh, this is what I want to be. This is what I'm going to be." She turned to me and she said, "You want to be a woman?" And at 5, I was like, well, why not? What's wrong with that, right? What if I do want to be a woman? Now, I knew that wasn't what I was talking about, right? I wanted to design clothes, right? And here's what's also fascinating, right? Many years later, I think I was 17 years old, my mother was remarried. Who designed her wedding dress?
Okay, man.
Boom. Me, right? So that came full circle years later, and I always brought that up and reminded them, y'all made fun of this, and now you want me to design your dress, right? So you can't have it both ways. Either you're gonna accept me and all of me in my flourishness, my gayness, and everything, right? So I don't think that anybody, as I said, I'll reiterate, I don't think anybody would wake up and say, I'm gonna choose this lifestyle. I don't like that word. Choose this lifestyle in order to go be ridiculed and all that stuff. So I knew, like you said, from the womb, came out flashy.
All right, knowing is one thing, but who you are today, knowing everything that you know about yourself, knowing everything that you know about the world, would you make a choice now? If you could go back and say and change anything, would you make the decision to say, I want to live my life as a heterosexual? Would you make that choice now, knowing what you know now? Would you make the decision to not be gay?
Hell no. If I can say it, like I stand so proud at 43 years old to be in a space where I can live out loud. I don't care who it is, right? In 2008, someone said to me, in 2008, Obama was running, came to San Francisco, and I worked in the community. I had the opportunity to shake his hand. Somebody said, you might want to tame it down when you, for what? For what? So I would hold that for years, right? Honey, I've been in a room with Barack Obama. I was gay and fabulous then too, right? Just as I am today. So I think everything, I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. So everything that we go through in life, everything that we have to experience, trials, tribulations, there's a purpose. God has a purpose. He is the plan. We may not know it in that time. So I, again, telling the family all the time, yeah, homeboy upstairs knew I was going to be gay and fabulous from the womb.
Anyone else?
I was thinking,
You'll still be gay. Still be gay. All right. And there's nothing wrong with that.
my brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm. You like being gay?
No, I look at my brothers and sisters and they are kind of miserable. And I'm like, okay, y'all got kids. I'm gonna go have a drink with my friends. Come to say goodbye. I'll be at family functions. Okay, goodbye. Y'all take y'all kids. Real problem.
Yeah, personally, I'm sorry. Yeah, personally, I would, knowing everything that I know, I would still choose to be who I am now. Like you were saying, everything that I've gone through, everything that I have achieved, everything that I've accomplished, all the things that, they were like stepping stones, everything that led to something else, that led to something else, that led to something else. All the people that I've met, all the things, it's just like, even with our organization, the Ujima Men's Collective, had I not been where I was, that would not have existed. All those types of things. I would not have worked at the Pride Center. We would never have had the Kiki Project. All the things that have happened because I am a person who is a same gender loving man, those things would not have happened because I would not have been in that space. Our Brother Speak group, that would not have happened because I would not have been in a space to have that created. So I am very proud of the things of being a Black same gender loving man, and all the things that I've done and the things that I will do. So, and yeah, I wouldn't change it either.
I'd like to echo those sentiments. I really feel like because of who I am, because of the fact that I do love the man.
You better answer this
Yeah,
one right.
absolutely. Sir, I'm sorry, it's a panel discussion. Please, quiet in the front.
Quiet in the front.
Right? Thank you, Lorenzo. Get this crowd in the room. So, really, thank you. I really feel like, I really feel strongly about the fact that I've become the person that I am because of the fact that I love the man that I love. The journey that I've had to travel in order to get to this place really has prepared me for this man, and really no one else. So, I've had the opportunity of raising kids, having some adopted children, right? And being able to have today new parents, right? That actually do affirm me and love me for who I am. I've become a stronger version of me after being tested by that trial of fire. And I don't think I don't know for sure, but I'd like to believe that I was picked out to actually be this version of me today, right? To be this man on the stage. So.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
If I can piggyback off that, so the last part that you said, say that one more time.
Well, it comes from my mom saying, baby, you've been picked out to be picked on.
So if I can take an exegetical approach to that, and in Job, the question was asked, have you considered my servant Job? Oftentimes we go through things not because of our own personal sins, because it's just like in the book of John when they ask, well, who sinned that this man may have been born blind? Was his man, was it the father or the mother? And Jesus answered, no one sinned that this man was born blind, but he was born blind so I can in return get the glory out of it. So I look at it like this: we go through these things, that would have broken some other people. Some of the things that we went through, some people would have committed suicide. Some of the things that we have endured may have caused people to go drinking and use substance abuse, but because he considered me for the task, he would not give me and put me in something that he did not equip me for. Because he said, I would never leave you nor forsake you. And in 1 Peter it says, and after you have suffered a little while. And we have to remember that it don't always last always.
Trouble don't. Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate that.
Yes, Jesus. Yes, Lord. Yes.
Back to what you said about suicide, when you're like trying to figure out yourself with being gay, suicide, and it's a
Is it on?
I think it went out.
Just use that when I take over.
Okay.
Thank you.
Suicide plays a heavy part into your dark days. Because before I came out to my mom, before she found out, before my mom found out, like, I was very depressed my high school years. I slept through all my classes, but I still passed. I still did my homework.
But you're here
I am
tell
here.
the story.
And it was a point where I came to, I don't want to be here anymore. And I just remember, like, how would my mom feel losing a child?
But God brought you through that, because otherwise, he knew that you had other work to do. He had stuff for you to do, and that's why you're still here. Otherwise, you would not be with us today. But God has work for you. I don't know what that is, and God may not have even spoken to you about what it is yet. He had stuff for you to do. So that's why you're still here, and I thank God that you are here, my brother. Appreciate you for being here. Yes, because a lot of times when we think about suicide, we think about the rates of suicide among people who are a part of the LGBTQ community is very high, because a lot of times they don't have, like you were saying, you didn't have anyone to talk to, you didn't have anyone to vent to, you didn't have anyone to have those conversations about, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. And when you turn into yourself, because you're the only person that you feel as though you can talk to. And you know, that's why we need to be so vigilant and visible in our community. So young men can see you and say, oh, Mr. Terry, I can talk to him because he is like I think I am. Mr. Edery, Mr. Clifton, Mr. Anthony. He seems like he could be a man like me. I don't know, but I could ask him. Because if we're not visible in our community, we're not letting people know who we are, then they're going to continuously. One of the things I always talk about when we talk about the down low, for me, I think the down low is really a lot of men who want to be gay, but society has drilled in their heads they cannot be gay. So therefore, they are living this dual life, and they're not really living their authentic lives. So if we start to be more visible and let people know who we are, then I think the community will start looking at us and saying that I can be like this. I don't have to shy away from the things that I'm feeling inside. A lot of times we feel it, and we're like, we'll have to suppress that because that's not of God, because that's what we've been taught. That's what society continues to teach us that. And we have to find out for ourselves that if God created us, God makes no mistakes.
Say so.
None. So therefore, however he created you, that's what he intended for you to be.
One of my favorite things to always say to my family, and we spent many years fighting about homosexuality and religion, is it says in his own words that God made man in his own image. So if he made me in his image, what does that mean? Homeboy knew I was going to be a flaming queen, right? He knew what was up because he created this. He knew what was forthcoming 15, 20, 30 years later, right? I am here, you are here. In his eyes and in his image, right? And trust me, somebody, by you coming out and owning your own space, there is somebody coming behind you watching, right? So when they're watching you live authentic and own your own truth, right? Share your story with people, right? That's giving inspiration and motivation to somebody else to step up and say, if he can do this, I can do this too.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, or fabulous, or gay? And I threw that in. Thank you. Shout out to Marion Wayne. You were talking about being the light, and realistically, what better light than to actually be a person that's living in truth?
Exactly.
I mean, because so many people, you look at social media, you're chasing it down as far as the next new snippet, but I get my most strength from my brothers and my sisters right next to me that I do work with today, that I get a chance to bump into at the grocery store. Like, that's where I draw my strength.
Exactly.
So living in truth, I believe that's absolutely right.
But going back to what Terry said, and also what you said, Lorenzo, when you talk about religion and God, we so get it confused of God's divinity and God's humanity.
Mm.
God's humanity, when he came down through 42 generations, where he came from eternity and stepped out into his humanity, but that does not necessarily means of his divinity. What I'm saying is homosexuality, as we stated, is a Greek word that was derived in the 13th century. So if that word was derived in the 13th century and the Bible was God's word was inspired through people centuries and centuries ago, how is that possible? How is it possible that homosexuality, it says in Leviticus, but you need to understand, when you read God's word, you need to have the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in another hand. You have to exegete the text, and you have to look at context. And you have to understand what was happening in those times where these older men, the same thing that was happening in Leviticus is happening now. You have older gay men preying on younger gay men. And that's what was happening. They had the older Jewish men preying on young men as their concubines and loving and taking advantage of them. But that's why I always tell people to study to show yourself approval. Because what God is to you may not be what God is to me, but at the end of the day, God created me.
Right.
And like you said, God doesn't create any mess and he does not make any mistakes.
Exactly. Thank you for that. Because I always look at it from the perspective of when God created me, you know, he broke the mold because there's never another Lorenzo that's going to walk this earth. I'm the only one. As is all of us. We are all individuals. And there's no other person that's going to create what you've created. No other person who can speak the way that you speak and speak the language and also has the journey that you've had. So we all have to live our lives, and we have to start living our lives authentically, living our lives openly, and being unashamed of who we are. So many times we are afraid to step out, like you were saying, trying to dim our lights and that type of stuff. Don't do that. Let your light shine. Be who you are authentically and be open and proud about whoever you are and all the things that you can do. We have one other question I want to ask you guys as well. Do any of you have like siblings who are a part of the LGBTQ community as well?
No.
No.
She confused.
No.
She is confused. I love my sister. I love my sister Nadia. Nadia Laverne
Dry
Shepherd.
stitching. Let's talk. Okay, never mind. That's just
I love her. Nadia moved down here shortly after, from North Carolina when she was with my aunt and uncle. And at the time I was with my ex, Nick, so she would come down. And Nadia was going through her phase. She was going through, it was no secret that she liked women. But what confused me, she dressed, her brother was her brother. So, if she dressed, because I used to go try to get her little dresses and stuff for church, Lucinda. She won't wear that, but get some jeans and stuff. But what confused me was, and I think it's the greatest gift ever, she got pregnant, which confused me. And that's how we got Nyla. That's how she know Nyla. But it confused me. But I am happy to say that I do have a sister who is a part of community. She teeter-totter. Right at the moment, she on the fence. She teeter-tottering. I think today she's a part of it.
Thank you, Edric.
get the mic. Get his mic.
Turn it off back there. Turn his mic off.
Yeah, to answer that question, Lorenzo, yes, I do have by blood my older brother. I was the youngest of 13 children, and my biological family. No, actually, no. It's funny. Yeah, we did. And we could kick your. Y'all not gonna talk about us in the South. Now. You gotta calm down. But the wild part about it is that I feel like my older brother, may rest in peace because he did pass away, complications from HIV and then AIDS, and then having his immune system compromised due to COVID. But he really struggled up until the time of his death with addiction. He struggled with a lack of self-love and that internal messaging about who he was as it related to who he was in the family, or as a Christian, or lack thereof, just really struggled. And I really feel like if he would have been in the room right now and a part of this conversation, he would have gotten something out of it, or possibly even contributed to it in a positive way. But he missed out on a lot of things because of his own respective journey, and that was his. But yeah, to answer your question simply, yes, I had an older brother who was gay. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
So I have two, from my mother, I have two biological sisters. We all had different fathers, but my biological father has multiple kids as well, and so I don't know about them, unfortunately. About 3 years ago, a few of them did reach out on Facebook, but I chose not to have a relationship with them. But I did hear a year ago, so she's now 19, I have a 19-year-old sister, and I did hear that she got caught kissing a girl in her bedroom, and so that sent the whole family in a frenzy. But what it did for me was realize it's awful that I can't be there for her to help guide her, because obviously my mother, she's not talking to her about what that means or how to unpackage that or how to identify with what just transpired in your bedroom, I can only imagine the hell that my 19-year-old sister, well, she's not 19 at the time, but she was like 17 or 18, what she endured, you know, with my mother's response by catching her in the room with another female. So I don't know 100% if she's lesbian or not.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing also, because I think that we, many times in our families, because a lot of us are reared in these households, whereas what happens in our household stays in our household. We don't talk about it outside of the house. So therefore, even if you are a part of the LGBTQ community, your parents have instilled in you to be silent about it sometimes. So therefore, you still don't want to talk about it. And even if you could help your brother or sister to help them through the process, you feel as though you can't because you've been told to be silent about your sexual orientation. And I think that's one of the reasons I think we're living in a time now that people are so able to be free and to be visible and to be open about their sexual orientation. There are still a lot of people in our society who still can't do that. Even though a lot of people can, but there are a lot of people who still are in families, in employment situations that they cannot be open about their sexual orientation. So I know I'm so thankful that I've worked in positions that I've always been able to just be who I am, be myself, and not have to hide anything. Even when I worked for the Florida Department of Health, my position was the MSM coordinator. So therefore, so even my job was like, it's for men who have sex with other men. So therefore, even in those environments, I was still able to be myself authentically and not have to hide, not have to change myself when I go to work. You know, code switch when I'm at work. Yo, how was the game last night, man? You know, I don't have to do that because that was not a part of my personality. I was always able to just be myself, which I've always appreciated. One question I do want to ask, and we're going to open up for the audience to ask questions in a moment or so, if you have questions. We're looking at like social justice in terms of how your sexual orientation could impact your employment, could impact laws that are in the state of Florida, those types of things. How do you try to navigate those different terrains in terms of being a person who is a same gender loving man, but also looking at how some of the laws may impact you individually as a person?
So, I mean, I do my best to be a part of the solution as it relates to working in the community. I really do enjoy being a part of organizations who are forward-facing with their initiatives, as well as the support that they're offering to the community, but also being able to speak to those respective policy and lawmakers up in Tallahassee or DC. So working with organizations that actually can amplify my voice or my concerns, that's been a huge way for me to actually stay active in not getting lost in all the rhetoric. So that way I at least know that I threw the strongest punch I could. You know, even if I get knocked out or knocked down with some of the things that are going on, I'm participating in trying to affect some type of change as best as I can. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It does, thank you, thank you. Anyone else have a comment or?
So I have worked, for my career, I have been in both for-profit and nonprofit worlds. Majority of my career in San Francisco was in corporate America. And one of the things that I would say to people all the time, when I would walk into a boardroom and have to give a presentation or talk to a CEO or something like that, I was always black first. First and foremost, that's the first thing they saw when I would walk into a room is a black man. So not only do I have to come in and get past that dynamic with all the faces in the room, which was primarily white at that time, right? I have to deal with that first. Then we gonna throw on the fact that I open up my mouth and the purse falls out. I now have to identify and let them know, like, yeah, she's queer too, honey, right? But one thing that I always made sure, and it took me a long time. Anybody who's read my book understands it has taken me a very long time to finally be comfortable in my own skin, right? growing up in a predominantly white community where you assimilated to that behavior, right? My extended family, grandmas, great aunts, all those people in the Midwest would always say, get on the phone with me, gosh, you sound so white now. What the heck does that mean to sound white, right? No, it was because I sounded too educated now, right? So that's what I meant earlier about coming out over and over and over again, right? Because now I've got to explain to you the way that I sound or how I'm speaking. It's not black enough or this enough and those sorts of things. So we're always having to have those conversations with folks, right? So one of the things that I've just, again, at this age, you can't tell me shit. Like, I am going to always be me. I don't care if Obama's in the room. I don't care if your CEO, Republican, is in the room. I don't care. Because what I will always stand for is that representation that you mentioned, that visibility, because again, I don't know who's watching me, right? So I could be empowering somebody to find their own voice. So if I need to be gay and black and fabulous every day in order to inspire the younger one to come up and be gay and fabulous, to be themselves, then dang it, that's what God put me here to do.
Exactly. Thank you for that. One of the things that I want to give each of you an opportunity just to kind of give closing statements, closing remarks in terms of sharing your story in terms of what social justice means to you, but also just who you are as a black, same-gender loving man living in this racist society. Just kind of how you navigate that terrain. We'll start with Clifton, work our way down, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience.
For some reason, I wanted to throw Edric under the bus. I don't know why. Maybe that's my competition. Maybe that's just, I wanted him to open his mouth first. All right, so let me just understand real quick. I'm supporting you. You get the first quote. So Lorenzo, you wanted us to be able to, once again, I'm sorry, so I'll make sure I get this.
Just articulate in terms of who you are as a black, same-gender loving man in our society.
Oh, okay, all right. I would say that as a black, same-gender loving man, I am a man who loves another man, who's also a father. Can I say father? I can say father.
3 times over.
Right?
3 times over.
Oh, yes, 3 times over. Yes, a father 3 times over. I am a more appreciative and loving and supportive son. I am an effective professional. I'm an honest, open, and caring therapist. I am a community activist. I'm a community servant. I think that's probably more appropriate. I'm a community servant. And I feel like I'm for me, and I say this, I said it earlier, I'm a better, stronger, bigger, brighter version of myself because of the fact that I am a same-gender-loving man who's been through the test of time, but also has an amazing person standing next to me who loves me back. So,
Thank you for that.
That's a good man, Savannah. That's a good man, Savannah. When I think of social justice, and no, he didn't pay me to say that either. But when I think,
I'm sorry, we was having a whole different conversation. He asked me who Savannah was, so I had to educate him.
you seen that movie? You see Waiting to Exhale. But when I think of social justice, I think that's my life. That's my life from, coming from an area where HIV and AIDS education was null and void, passing out condoms in the street, tackling the church, having uncomfortable conversations at the church, going to where the people are at, when they stated that openly gay men could not be Masons. I created a safe haven for men in Prince Hall to be who they are and found a lodge that does not discriminate against what you do, your color, your religion, creed. As long as you're freeborn men, You know, that's why I see myself being that voice where people don't have a voice. That's my life's journey. And my thing has always been, Lord, you know, whatever, you know, everybody wants longevity of life, but I just want to live a life that he can honestly say you have lived and you have served well. And I want to be able to give of everything that he has deposited into me. And I don't want to die with anything. So everything I try to give back to my community, because my community is my life.
Thank you for that, Eric. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Terry.
So I would say first and foremost, I, just like Edric just said, social justice is what I live every single day. Every single day I am a walking billboard for social justice because I am black and I am LGBTQ. So I have no choice but to fight and live and breathe social justice every single day. The second thing that I want to say is, it is come to my attention, thank you God, that I am an agent of change. I am an agent of change. Every single thing that he has put on my plate to endure, to overcome, to experience, has led me to the space where I now have a voice, a platform, the space to serve his will, to serve his message, to make sure that we are thinking about humanity, that we are thinking about those that are coming after us, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that's going to be running this country, right? So I have been put here on this earth to live out his purpose for me, and that is an agent of change. And then the last thing that I want to say is, every day I think about how I can be greater today than I was the day before, right? That is my mantra. Every single morning I wake up, I pray, thank you, I had breath this morning, thank you Jesus, right? Because it's not promised, right? So that's first of all. Then the second thing is okay, so what didn't I get done yesterday? How was I not a better person yesterday? How can I do better today than I did the day before? And so from that, I say, it doesn't matter if I'm black, if I'm LGBTQ, because at the end of the day, I have to be a good human being. That is more important than anything else. Be a good human being. All that rest of that stuff comes with that, right? The change agent, the servant, the being black, being LGBT, all that comes with that. At the end of the day, we're human first. So I think about, how can I be a better human being and inspire of those that are around me to just be good people.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah. I'm a good person, I think. I try. All right, Anthony.
So for me, social justice. My social justice didn't come to this year. Well, last year at Pride, a news reporter stopped me and my brother right here.
Hey, brother.
Hey. She stopped us and asked us, how do we feel about this current Pride? What we said didn't make the paper.
It didn't.
It didn't. But just for her asking, how do I feel, it made me feel important. Which I went and looked for the article. I was bad that I wasn't used. But I did use some language, and it was not in the best way.
The wonder. Well, that's the wonder.
Mm-hmm. But she could have edited it. She could have edited it.
They don't have that many.
It wasn't what he said. Well, it was what I said. So.
They don't have that many.
But for me, I love now showing up and being myself, because at work, I never used to tell anybody I was gay. If you figured it out, you figured it out. Now you ask me, I'm like, yeah. Okay, and next question.
Thank you. I want to thank my panelists.
Next question for you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, but for me, I love expressing myself now. So. Yeah, I'm done now.
Oh, that was all you wanted to ask. Beautiful. No, thank you for that. Thank you, Anthony, for sharing. I really do appreciate that, because it does take a lot for people who did not share their orientation at work to start now being able to say, if someone asks you that question, to be able to say, yes, I am gay. And it's not a big deal. It's like, I'm gay, and you have any other questions? Because it's not First of all, it's really none of their business.
That part.
That's the first part. It's none of their business. And it's like, why do you want to know? That's usually like, when people have asked me that in the past, I would say, why do you want to know? That's usually how
No,
I
no,
ask
no.
because,
What we need to start asking is, are you heterosexual?
oh, I don't care if they're heterosexual.
Well, I don't care either, which means you shouldn't care if I'm homosexual.
That's why my
the
question is that,
point.
like, why do you want to know? Because it's like, what is the purpose of me sharing this information with you?
I think because
There's
so
no
many
purpose.
people, and I'm just gonna play the devil's advocate for a second, because I feel that so many people, celebrities and non-celebrities, when they come out, others feel like, well, what's your story? Because they see that, well, this person did this, so let me just ask you, because they feel comfortable.
That becomes the problem. So they're so comfortable
Yeah.
asking you about your personal life. Because I don't ask you about your personal life, about what you and your wife. It's none of my business. As my personal life should be none of your business. If I share it with you, then that's one thing. But if I don't share it with you, then I'll start inquiring and putting me under inquisition in terms of, well, are you gay? Do you do this? Are you top? Are you bottom? Da, da, da. Who cares? It's none
What's
of your
that?
business. Okay, move on. We have questions from the audience, but I do want to thank my panelists for coming and joining us tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you guys so much. I do appreciate you coming out and joining us. We do have some questions from the audience. We'll take a couple of questions. We have a couple of minutes before our time runs out. We're going to do this for an hour, so we have a few more minutes. So we have a question in the back. You need to come to the front, sir.
I'll let you know, Larry, don't let me be gay at work, y'all. He let me be
I don't let you be gay at work. You're not gay at work.
I didn't really have a question, but I kind of wanted to respond to a question that you asked your panel, because I was thinking about that when you said that if you could go back and change it, then you would. And I immediately thought I wouldn't change being gay, but I would have had more complete conversations, especially with my older sister. Because like she was, my best friend, and unknowingly she was out there defending me, not saying that I wasn't gay, but like if anybody had a problem with it, she was putting her foot in their ass, to be quite blunt. So I wouldn't have let her go out and do that blindly like that. You know what I mean? I would have had more complete conversations, because she was always, a big support. That's what I would do. And also I would have forced the issue with my mother and had more complete conversations. I kind of gave up, because she would ask questions like, are you happy? Are you dating anybody? And then when I started to tell her stuff, okay, that's enough. That was a yes or no question. She was that type of person. Like, I want to know, but I don't want to know that much. You know what I mean? Like, one step forward and then she take two back.
Yeah.
So that's the only difference that I would make.
Okay, thank you for that. I understand that. Yeah, because sometimes people do want to ask those questions, but we have to be very intentional about how we answer them sometimes as well. Yes, sir.
I don't have a question. I just want to make a statement. It's a breath of fresh air to be in a space of Black LGBTQ men that's actually of substance for once in a lifetime. I just want to say that. Somebody I can actually relate to, and I can hear what they talking about, like my story is similar, or whatever the case is. It's a good feeling.
Thank you for sharing. We appreciate that. I do appreciate that.
Can you raise your hand a little bit higher? I don't got my glasses on.
Good evening, everyone. First Lady Kendra here. I want to know, since transgender women are under attack in the state of Florida, as Black men, are you willing to stand up and support them as allies?
I think I'm sorry, I really want to get this one, if you don't mind. So today on the filming of Cliff Notes podcast, shout out. Yeah, absolutely. Miss Adriana and Miss Tatiana were both invited from TIG, excuse me, the Trans Inclusive Group. They are phenomenal women that I definitely want to make sure that we are all supporting, and I think we all do, in order to raise the awareness and make sure that they are actually heard. We're doing everything that we can, at least that I know of 3 of us on this panel. I'm sorry, Anthony, I just met you. We'll talk later. But I know we're doing everything that we can in order to not only get behind them, but also to challenge some of the leaders that we work with within the community in order to speak up and also fight for their rights, their inclusion, as well as their safety. And I know that that's happening across this panel. 4 of us. I'm sorry, Lorenzo, I left you out. My bad. But yes, so I think in answering that question, yes, 100%, we are doing, and I'm saying we, I feel like I'm speaking for y'all, we're doing everything that we can from this seat, right, or from these seats, in order to make sure that they are not forgotten and that they are always included in the forefronts of our minds, as well as in the movement and within the community. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. And also, and for me, when there are rallies, when there are marches, whatever, I participate because I want to be visible. I want to be seen in those environments. Not only to be seen, but also to say that I support you. I'm here with you. I'm following you because I want you to be in the forefront because this is your fight. But I'm here to support as much as I possibly can.
And I appreciate you because you were there for me personally at my job, supporting me, holding my men's group.
Yeah.
You know, I thank Ujima men's group.
Thank you. We'll take one more question, then we're going to call it a night.
Mine isn't really a question. It's more so just to piggyback off of what Edric and speaking about the Bible and faith. Homosexuality goes all the way back to the beginning of the book in Genesis. So, you know, I salute each and every one of you. As a heterosexual Black female living with HIV, I stand with you, and I just piggyback off of what Lorenzo just said. I'm here to support your fight and your vision and your missions, and I'm just so proud to be in this space and see such a diverse group of Black men, well educated, and just doing their thing, living their authentic truth, because there are so many people and that are just afraid to be authentically themselves. So I salute each and every one of you. And Lorenzo, I salute you, my brother, for having this space and making it a safe space for men to, saying, MSM.
You know what you mean, boo.
Y'all know what I mean. To be able to have this space and encourage others. Because I think it was a testament right here, this young man behind me being able to say that this is, I can identify. And at the end of the day, I believe that's what it's about. So thank you.
Thank you, honey.
Quick question. I want to know that when you all came out to tell your mom that you all were gay, when you all seen your mom crying and heard about, you know, when you told them that you was gay, how did it make you all feel? Did you regret that you was that way? Or, you know, anyone can answer that.
Yeah, so I didn't feel regret. I spent years doing everything in my power to make her feel comfortable. Everything. And I mean, in a space where I go home for the holidays, I'm trying to not be so flamboyant, not be so gay, if you will, like do all this stuff because I know her level of uncomfortability. When I say it took me all the way until my late 20s, early 30s before I realized, honey, I can't live my life for you. I only get one, and when it's gone, it's gone. And by that time, she found out I was questioning my sexuality at 15, 16 years old. I'm now late 20s, early 30s. I can't change your thought process about who I am. And at the end of the day, I'm your child. That should take precedent over anything else. Anything else, right? And same thing, like Sean was just talking about, and then having to tell her, call home at 30 years old and say, hey, there's a national magazine who's getting ready to publicize that I'm HIV positive. I now have to come out to you on that as well. This was a tough one for, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, our relationship was so traumatic for years because of my sexuality and her Sunday Christianness, I like to call it, right? Right? So for me, I just couldn't own that space for her anymore. I would send home books. I would, do everything I can to try to have conversations with her to try to move forward, and it just did not happen. And that's the reality, right? There's a lot of people that become best friends with their parents. There's a lot of people that, get supported by their parents, but the reality is there's a lot of us that do not have the happy ending, if you will. Shut up. There's a lot of us that don't have that happy ending. And so I think at the end of the day, we just as individuals have to realize you have to do whatever you have to do to process what that means for you. My mom told me the exact same thing. I feel like I failed you. And again, I realized in that conversation with her, I needed to do whatever I could to help comfort her, to help her realize I'm still your firstborn. I'm still the straight A student. Whatever you helped to raise me for, I'm still that person. But unfortunately, she went to her deathbed not getting past that and not being able to take that positivity or that break in our relationship to her grave. And that's an unfortunate situation to have that on your heart and soul, right? Obviously, I ain't been dead yet, knock on wood, but I would imagine when your final days come, still holding on to that just because of who I am sexual, like it doesn't make sense to me. So that's something that I had to just say, you know what? I have to live my life for me, and she has to do the same, so I have to respect her beliefs, and I hope and pray that someday when the time comes, she can do the same for me.
Thank you so much, Terry. That's going to be the conclusion for our. Did you want to say something, Anthony?
I did want to say something.
I'm good. Okay. I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Want to thank my panelists. I think you guys were amazing. Thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable and being authentic. One of the things that we really want to do is to really kind of have these conversations, because in our community, we don't have space like this a lot of times to have these conversations. And when we do, sometimes we don't have a lot of people, but I think that it's really important for us to share. If it's 2, 3, it doesn't matter the number of people, it's the opportunity to share, it's opportunity to have the conversations amongst ourselves. And so thank you again for coming out. Thank you guys for coming out as well. We are going to, planning to put this on our YouTube page, so eventually other people can start watching this as well, so they can see and they can hear the things we've talked about tonight. And again, thank you so much for coming out. Hopefully you have a great evening tonight. We have food, we have drinks, so enjoy yourself. And again, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you next time.